Have you ever wondered what goes on behind the scenes of your favorite animated comedy? Tonight, we're diving deep into the wild world of Family Guy with facts so fascinating they might just lull you into the most entertaining sleep of your life. From secret voice acting techniques to hidden Easter eggs that took fans decades to discover, these are the Family Guy facts that will blow your mind. Picture this. It's 1999, and a young animator named Seth MacFarlane is sitting in a cramped office, sketching what would become one of television's most controversial and beloved families. Little did he know that his creation would survive cancellation twice, spark international debates, and become a cultural phenomenon that would define comedy for generations. But here's the thing. The story of Family Guy is far more incredible than anything Peter Griffin could ever dream up. Let's start with something that will immediately grab your attention. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice by Fox? The first cancellation happened in 2002 after just 3 seasons. Network executives thought the show was too edgy, too controversial, and frankly, too weird for mainstream television. They were wrong. Dead wrong. The show's popularity on Adult Swim and DVD sales were so massive that Fox had no choice but to bring it back in 2005. Then, believe it or not, they canceled it again in 2007. But once again, fan outcry and incredible ratings forced the network to reverse their decision. This makes Family Guy one of the only shows in television history to be resurrected twice by pure fan power. Here's where things get really interesting. Seth MacFarlane, the creative genius behind the show, almost wasn't around to see his creation succeed. On September 11, 2001, MacFarlane was supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11. Yes, that Flight 11. He was scheduled to fly from Boston to Los Angeles that morning, but a combination of a hangover and his travel agent giving him the wrong departure time caused him to miss the flight by just 10 minutes. That flight crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. If not for that hangover and scheduling mix-up, there might never have been a Family Guy renaissance, no American Dad, no The Orville. The entire landscape of modern animation could have been completely different. Now, let's talk about voices, because this is where Family Guy becomes absolutely mind-blowing. Seth MacFarlane doesn't just create the show. He voices Peter Griffin, Brian Griffin, Stewie Griffin, Glenn Quagmire, Tom Tucker, and Carter Pewter-Schmidt. That's 6 major characters, each with completely distinct personalities and vocal patterns. But here's the kicker. He does all of these voices live, in real time, often switching between characters mid-sentence during recording sessions. The other voice actors have described watching MacFarlane work as like witnessing someone with multiple personality disorder, except it's all controlled and brilliant. Speaking of Stewie, let's address the elephant in the room. For years, fans debated whether Stewie was gay, straight, or something else entirely. Seth MacFarlane finally settled this debate in a way that's both hilarious and profound. According to MacFarlane, Stewie's sexuality is intentionally fluid and undefined because he's a baby. Babies don't have developed sexual identities. The joke isn't about his orientation. It's about the absurdity of a 1-year-old having any romantic inclinations at all. This clever writing choice allows the character to be whatever the story needs him to be, making him one of the most versatile characters in television comedy. Here's a fact that will make you appreciate the show's attention to detail. Every single cutaway gag in Family Guy is hand-drawn and animated, even the ones that last only 3 seconds. The animation team creates full character models, backgrounds, and even choreography for jokes that might get a 2-second laugh. This dedication to craft is why Family Guy's visual comedy feels so rich and detailed compared to other animated shows that rely on cheaper animation shortcuts. The show's controversial reputation isn't accidental. It's carefully calculated. Seth MacFarlane has revealed that many of the most outrageous jokes are specifically designed to distract from the show's more subtle social commentary. While audiences are debating whether a particular gag went too far, they're absorbing deeper messages about American culture, politics, and society. It's comedy as intellectual sleight of hand, and it works brilliantly. Let's dive into some character origins that will surprise you. Brian Griffin, the intellectual family dog, was originally going to be just a regular pet with no speaking lines. MacFarlane added Brian's voice and personality during the pilot episode because he felt the family needed a voice of reason, someone who could call out Peter's ridiculous behavior while still being part of the family dynamic. The character became so integral that many episodes are built entirely around Brian's storylines. Here's something that might change how you watch the show forever. The Griffin family's house layout has been deliberately inconsistent throughout the series. Sometimes there are different numbers of rooms, staircases appear and disappear, and the kitchen changes size depending on what the scene requires. This isn't sloppy animation. It's an intentional choice. MacFarlane wanted the house to feel like a cartoon space where anything could happen, rather than a realistic location that would limit storytelling possibilities. The famous chicken fights between Peter and Ernie the giant chicken weren't originally supposed to become a recurring gag. The first chicken fight was written as a one-off joke for a single episode. However, the animation team had so much fun creating the elaborate fight sequence that they kept finding excuses to bring it back. These sequences now take weeks to animate and are some of the most expensive scenes the show produces, but they've become so beloved by fans that the network happily approves the budget every time. Let's talk about the show's relationship with censorship because it's more complex than you might think. Family Guy has actually been censored differently in various countries, creating unique versions of episodes around the world. In some regions, entire storylines are removed or altered. This has created a strange phenomenon where hardcore fans collect different international versions of episodes to see how the same jokes are handled in different cultural contexts. It's like a global experiment in comedy and censorship. Here's a technical fact that showcases the show's evolution. Early Family Guy episodes were animated using traditional cell animation techniques, but the show gradually transitioned to digital animation. However, they maintained the hand-drawn look by using digital tools that mimic traditional animation methods. This hybrid approach gives Family Guy its distinctive visual style that looks both modern and classically animated. The writing process for Family Guy is unlike any other television show. The writer's room operates more like a comedy club than a traditional TV writing environment. Writers pitch jokes constantly, and the best ones get integrated into episodes regardless of whether they fit the main storyline. This is why the show's cutaway gags often feel so random and disconnected. They literally are random jokes that were too funny not to use. Speaking of cutaway gags, there's actually a complex system for categorizing them. The writers have developed an internal rating system for gags based on how offensive, surreal, or topical they are. This helps them balance episodes so that viewers get a mix of different comedy styles. Too many surreal gags in a row can lose audiences, while too many topical jokes can date an episode quickly. Here's something that will make you appreciate the voice acting even more. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois Griffin, originally auditioned for a completely different character. She was supposed to voice a minor recurring character, but her chemistry with Seth MacFarlane during the audition was so strong that they rewrote Lois's personality to match Borstein's natural comedic instincts. This collaborative approach to character development is why the Griffin family feels so authentic despite being completely absurd. The show's impact on popular culture extends far beyond television. Family Guy has influenced internet meme culture, political discourse, and even academic studies on contemporary humor. Universities now offer courses that analyze Family Guy episodes as examples of postmodern comedy and cultural commentary. The show that was once considered too lowbrow for television is now being studied by scholars as a significant cultural artifact. Let's explore the show's relationship with celebrity guest stars. Unlike many animated shows that simply hire celebrities to play themselves, Family Guy often asks famous people to voice completely different characters. This approach has led to some surprising performances where you might not even recognize the celebrity's voice. The casting directors specifically look for celebrities who can disappear into their roles rather than just showing up to be famous. Here's a behind-the-scenes fact about the show's music. Every song in Family Guy, from the opening theme to the elaborate musical numbers, is composed and performed by professional musicians. Seth MacFarlane, who has released several jazz albums, personally oversees the musical aspects of the show. The orchestra recordings are done with full ensembles, giving the show's music a richness that most animated comedies can't match. The show's approach to social issues is more sophisticated than critics often acknowledge. Family Guy frequently tackles controversial topics, but the show's official stance is usually revealed through Brian's character, who serves as the moral compass. When Peter does something outrageous, Brian's reaction often represents the show's actual position on the issue. This allows the show to explore controversial territory while maintaining a clear ethical framework. Here's something that might surprise casual viewers. Family Guy has actually won several prestigious awards, including Emmy nominations and Annie Awards for animation excellence. The show's reputation for controversy sometimes overshadows its technical and artistic achievements, but industry professionals consistently recognize the quality of its writing, animation, and voice acting. The international success of Family Guy has led to some fascinating cultural adaptations. In some countries, local writers create original cutaway gags that reference local culture and politics while maintaining the show's overall style. These regional variations have become collector's items for international fans who want to see how different cultures interpret the Family Guy format. Let's discuss the show's relationship with its own continuity. Family Guy deliberately ignores its own timeline and character development, treating each episode as a standalone story. Characters die and come back to life. Major life events are forgotten, and personality traits change based on what's funny for individual episodes. This approach was revolutionary in television comedy and has influenced countless other shows. The animation style of Family Guy was specifically designed to be cost-effective while maintaining quality. The character designs use simple shapes and limited color palettes, which makes animation faster and cheaper. However, the show compensates for this simplicity with incredibly detailed backgrounds and elaborate action sequences. This balance between efficiency and spectacle is part of what makes the show economically sustainable. Here's a fact about the show's writing timeline that might surprise you. Family Guy episodes are often written months or even years before they air, which means the writers have to predict which topics will still be relevant by broadcast time. This has led to some episodes that feel incredibly timely and others that reference events or celebrities that are no longer culturally significant. The writers have learned to focus on timeless themes and universal human experiences that will remain funny regardless of when the episode airs. The show's approach to parody is methodical and research-intensive. When Family Guy decides to parody a movie, television show, or cultural phenomenon, the writers study the source material extensively. They watch movies multiple times, read reviews and analyses, and even interview people involved in the original productions. This thorough research is why Family Guy parodies often capture subtle details that casual viewers of the original material might miss. Speaking of parodies, let's talk about the show's relationship with other animated comedies. Family Guy exists in a strange competitive space with shows like The Simpsons and South Park. Rather than avoiding comparisons, the show has embraced them, creating episodes that directly reference and interact with these other shows. This meta approach to animated comedy has created a shared universe of sorts where different animated families acknowledge each other's existence. The voice recording process for Family Guy is surprisingly collaborative. While Seth MacFarlane voices multiple characters, the other actors often improvise and ad-lib during recording sessions. Many of the funniest moments in episodes come from spontaneous interactions between voice actors that weren't in the original script. The show's editors then work to integrate these improvised moments into the final episodes. Here's something that showcases the show's attention to detail. Family Guy maintains detailed character backstories and family histories that extend far beyond what's shown in episodes. The writers have created extensive biographies for each character, including childhood experiences, educational backgrounds, and psychological profiles. This hidden depth informs how characters react to different situations, even in seemingly random cutaway gags. The show's international broadcast has created some unique censorship challenges. Different countries have different standards for what can be shown on television, which means episodes are edited differently around the world. Some countries remove entire storylines, while others simply bleep out specific words or blur certain images. This has created a fascinating study in how different cultures approach comedy and censorship. Family Guy's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. The show's rapid-fire joke style and quotable dialogue have made it perfect for meme culture. Countless Family Guy moments have become viral internet content, often introducing the show to audiences who have never watched full episodes. This digital second life has helped maintain the show's cultural relevance across different generations. The animation team for Family Guy includes artists from around the world, creating a truly international production. Animators in different countries work on different aspects of each episode, with sophisticated coordination systems ensuring consistency across the global production pipeline. This international approach brings diverse artistic perspectives to the show while maintaining its distinctive American humor. Let's talk about the show's relationship with its own merchandise. Family Guy products range from traditional items like t-shirts and toys to unusual collaborations with high-end fashion brands and gourmet food companies. The show's irreverent attitude extends to its commercial partnerships, often resulting in products that are as surprising and unconventional as the show itself. The show's approach to holiday episodes demonstrates its sophisticated understanding of audience expectations. Rather than creating simple seasonal content, Family Guy holiday episodes often subvert traditional holiday tropes while still delivering the emotional satisfaction that viewers expect from seasonal television. This balance between cynicism and sentimentality is one of the show's most impressive achievements. Here's a final fact that brings everything full circle. Family Guy's survival and success represent more than just entertainment industry triumph. The show's journey from cancellation to cultural phenomenon demonstrates how modern media consumption has changed. In the pre-internet era, a canceled show stayed canceled. But Family Guy's resurrection through DVD sales, syndication, and streaming proved that audiences had more power than anyone realized. The show didn't just come back from the dead. It helped establish new models for how television shows can build and maintain audiences across multiple platforms and decades. As we wind down this journey through the fascinating world of Family Guy, remember that behind every outrageous joke and controversial moment is a team of artists, writers, and performers who have dedicated their careers to making people laugh. Whether you love it or hate it, Family Guy has undeniably changed television comedy forever. From its near-death experiences to its current status as a cultural institution, the show proves that sometimes the most unlikely ideas become the most enduring successes. Sweet dreams, and remember, in the world of Family Guy, anything is possible, no matter how ridiculous it might seem. Have you ever wondered if Stewie Griffin is actually a psychopath or just a misunderstood genius? What if I told you that the creators of Family Guy have hidden some of the most disturbing and fascinating secrets about this baby that would completely change how you see the show forever? Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the darkest corners of animated television. Today, we're uncovering the shocking lore behind one of animation's most controversial characters. From hidden meanings in his accent to disturbing implications about his sexuality and time travel adventures, we're about to explore Family Guy's secrets that even die-hard fans have missed. But before we start, make sure to hit that subscribe button because this rabbit hole goes deeper than you think, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Let's start with something that will blow your mind right away. Stewie's British accent isn't just a random character quirk. According to the show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, there's a deeply psychological reason behind it. The accent represents Stewie's desperate attempt to distance himself from his family and create a superior identity. It's actually a defense mechanism rooted in childhood trauma and feelings of abandonment. Think about it. Stewie is surrounded by what he perceives as intellectual inferiors. His father Peter is portrayed as bumbling and crude. His mother Lois often dismisses him, and his siblings fail to engage with his advanced intellect. The British accent becomes his way of elevating himself above what he sees as American mediocrity. It's not just pretentious, it's protective. But here's where it gets really interesting. Voice actor Seth MacFarlane has revealed in interviews that the accent was originally inspired by Rex Harrison's performance in My Fair Lady, specifically the character of Henry Higgins. Harrison's character was known for being intellectually arrogant and emotionally distant from others. Sound familiar? This connection runs deeper than you might think. Henry Higgins was a character who viewed himself as superior to everyone around him, particularly women, and had difficulty forming genuine emotional connections. These are exact parallels to Stewie's character development throughout the series. The accent isn't just mimicry, it's psychological modeling. Moving into even more disturbing territory, let's talk about Stewie's relationship with violence and murder. In early seasons, Stewie's homicidal tendencies weren't played entirely for laughs. The writers included subtle hints that his violent thoughts stem from genuine psychological disturbance rather than typical childhood acting out. Consider his detailed knowledge of weapons, torture techniques, and murder methods. This isn't information a normal one-year-old would possess, even in an animated universe. The show's writers have suggested that Stewie's intelligence comes with a dark side, an inability to process normal, emotional responses to conflict. There's a particularly chilling episode where Stewie creates a simulation of killing Lois, and his satisfaction with the violence goes beyond typical cartoon comedy. The writers included psychological details that suggest Stewie experiences genuine pleasure from imagining harm to others. This crosses the line from innocent childhood fantasy into something much more concerning. What makes this even more unsettling is how other characters react to Stewie's violent statements. Most of the time, they can't understand him or they dismiss his comments as baby babbling. But the few characters who do understand him, like Brian, often seem genuinely disturbed by what Stewie says. This suggests that even within the show's universe, Stewie's thoughts are recognized as abnormal. Now let's dive into one of the most controversial aspects of Stewie's character development. His sexuality has been a source of debate and speculation since the show began. But there are hidden clues that reveal the writer's true intentions. Seth MacFarlane has made several statements over the years suggesting that Stewie is gay. But the way this has been handled in the show reveals some problematic undertones. Rather than presenting his sexuality as a natural part of his character development, it's often used as shock value or comedic relief. There's an uncomfortable pattern in how the show handles Stewie's potential relationships with male characters. His interactions with other boys his age, his fascination with certain male celebrities, and his reactions to romantic situations all contain coded language that adult viewers recognize but children watching wouldn't understand. The most disturbing aspect is how the show uses Stewie's age to make jokes about adult themes. Because he's technically a baby, the writers can include sexual innuendo and mature content that would be completely inappropriate if he were portrayed as his actual age emotionally and mentally. This creates a strange cognitive dissonance for viewers. We're supposed to accept Stewie as intellectually mature enough to understand complex concepts, build advanced technology, and engage in philosophical discussions. But then the show treats his sexuality as a punchline specifically because of his physical age. The time travel elements of Stewie's character open up another disturbing can of worms. Throughout the series, Stewie has demonstrated the ability to travel through time and alternate dimensions. But if you pay close attention to these episodes, there are implications that Stewie has been manipulating events in ways that benefit him psychologically. Consider the episode where Stewie and Brian travel to different time periods. Stewie shows remarkably little concern for the consequences of changing historical events. He's willing to potentially erase people from existence or alter major world events just to satisfy his curiosity or desires. This reveals a fundamental lack of empathy that goes beyond typical childhood selfishness. Stewie understands that his actions can cause suffering to others, but he simply doesn't care. He views other people, even those he claims to love, as expendable if they interfere with his goals. There's also the disturbing implication that Stewie may have used time travel to manipulate his own family relationships. Several episodes hint that he's been to the future and knows how certain events will play out. Yet he allows traumatic things to happen to his family members because it serves his purposes. The relationship between Stewie and Brian deserves special attention because it reveals some of the darkest aspects of Stewie's psychology. On the surface, their friendship appears to be the one genuine emotional connection Stewie has made. But when you examine their interactions closely, a more troubling pattern emerges. Stewie often treats Brian more like a pet than a friend, despite Brian's obvious intelligence and emotional needs. He manipulates Brian's insecurities about his writing career, his drinking problem, and his romantic failures. Stewie provides just enough support to keep Brian dependent on their relationship, but not enough to actually help Brian grow as a person. This is classic emotional manipulation. Stewie has identified Brian's weaknesses and uses them to maintain control over their relationship. He offers Brian intellectual stimulation and adventure that Brian can't find elsewhere, creating a situation where Brian becomes psychologically dependent on Stewie's attention. The most disturbing aspect is how Stewie reacts when Brian tries to form relationships with others. He becomes jealous and possessive, often sabotaging Brian's attempts at happiness with other characters. This isn't the behavior of a true friend. It's the behavior of someone who views others as possessions. Let's talk about something that will completely change how you view Stewie's character. The show's writers have included subtle hints that Stewie may not actually be as intelligent as he appears. Instead, much of his advanced knowledge and technological ability may be the result of accessing information from alternate dimensions or future timelines. Think about it logically. How does a 1-year-old acquire the knowledge necessary to build time machines, death rays, and mind control devices? Even accounting for the show's absurd universe, this level of technological sophistication requires decades of study and experience. The answer may be that Stewie isn't learning this information in the traditional sense. He's accessing it through his interdimensional travel abilities. This would explain why his knowledge seems to appear spontaneously, and why he sometimes knows things that haven't been invented yet in his timeline. If this theory is correct, it raises disturbing questions about Stewie's true nature. Is he actually a 1-year-old human, or is he something else entirely? The show has hinted at supernatural elements in Stewie's character that go beyond simple genius-level intelligence. This would also explain why Stewie's personality seems to shift dramatically between episodes. Different versions of Stewie from alternate dimensions might be influencing or occasionally replacing the original. This isn't just speculation. There are episodes where multiple Stewies appear and they have distinctly different personalities and moral frameworks. The financial implications of Stewie's inventions reveal another dark secret about his character. Throughout the series, Stewie has created technology that would be worth billions of dollars in the real world. Time travel, teleportation, advanced robotics, genetic manipulation. These are technologies that would revolutionize human civilization. Yet Stewie never seems interested in using his inventions to improve the world, or even to improve his family's financial situation. The Griffins continue to live in a modest middle-class home despite having access to technology that could solve most of humanity's problems. This reveals something deeply selfish about Stewie's nature. He's not interested in helping others or making the world a better place. He creates advanced technology purely for his own amusement or to solve his personal problems. The potential benefits to humanity are irrelevant to him. Even more disturbing is what this says about his view of human suffering. Stewie has the ability to cure diseases, solve poverty, prevent wars, and eliminate countless sources of human misery. His choice not to do so suggests that he views human suffering as either unimportant or potentially entertaining. The show's handling of Stewie's relationship with his parents reveals some of the most psychologically complex aspects of his character. His hatred for Lois isn't just typical mother-son conflict blown out of proportion. There are hints that Stewie's hostility stems from a deep-seated fear of emotional vulnerability. Lois represents everything that threatens Stewie's carefully constructed identity. She's emotionally intuitive. She sees through his intellectual pretensions, and she offers the kind of unconditional love that Stewie finds terrifying. His plots to kill her aren't really about hatred. They're about eliminating what he perceives as a threat to his psychological defenses. Peter, on the other hand, represents everything Stewie fears becoming. Peter's intellectual limitations, emotional openness, and general contentment with life are the opposite of everything Stewie believes makes him superior. His contempt for Peter is actually a projection of his own insecurities about masculinity and emotional expression. The most tragic aspect of Stewie's character is that his intelligence isolates him from the very connections he desperately needs. He's created an identity based on intellectual superiority that prevents him from experiencing genuine emotional intimacy with others. This psychological isolation explains many of Stewie's more extreme behaviors. His violence, manipulation, and general disregard for others aren't signs of inherent evil. They're desperate attempts to feel some kind of connection or control in a world where his intelligence makes genuine relationships nearly impossible. The show's writers have included several episodes that hint at what Stewie might become as an adult, and the implications are truly disturbing. Future versions of Stewie are typically portrayed as either megalomaniacal world leaders or completely isolated hermits. Neither option suggests healthy psychological development. This raises uncomfortable questions about whether Stewie's character arc is actually a tragedy disguised as comedy. Are we watching a brilliant child slowly transform into a monster because his intelligence prevents him from developing normal emotional connections? The most chilling aspect is that Stewie seems aware of these potential futures, but appears unable or unwilling to change course. He's trapped by his own psychological defenses and his need to maintain his identity as intellectually superior to everyone around him. One of the most overlooked aspects of Stewie's character is his relationship with technology and how it reflects his view of human relationships. Stewie frequently builds robots, artificial intelligences, and other mechanical beings to serve his needs. But pay attention to how he treats these creations. Stewie programs his technological creations to be completely subservient to his will. They have no independent thoughts or desires that might conflict with his own. This reveals his ideal relationship dynamic. He wants connections with others, but only if they involve complete control on his part. When his creations do develop independence or challenge his authority, Stewie typically destroys them without hesitation. This pattern reveals how he would likely treat human relationships if he had the same level of control over people that he has over his inventions. The most disturbing example of this is how Stewie reacts when his creations show genuine emotions or desires for independence. Rather than being proud of creating truly intelligent life, he views their independence as a betrayal and responds with violence. This suggests that Stewie's inability to form healthy relationships isn't just due to his intelligence or psychological issues. He fundamentally doesn't understand or value the autonomy of others. He wants connection, but only on his terms and only if it doesn't challenge his sense of superiority. The show's exploration of Stewie's moral development, or lack thereof, reveals some of the most troubling aspects of his character. Throughout the series, Stewie has numerous opportunities to learn empathy, compassion, and genuine care for others. Yet he consistently fails to internalize these lessons in any meaningful way. What makes this particularly disturbing is that Stewie clearly understands moral concepts intellectually. He can discuss ethics, philosophy, and the difference between right and wrong with sophisticated language and apparent understanding. But this intellectual knowledge doesn't translate into emotional understanding or behavioral change. This disconnect between intellectual and emotional intelligence suggests that Stewie may be fundamentally incapable of genuine moral growth. He can understand why others value compassion and empathy, but he cannot experience these emotions himself in any authentic way. The implications of this for his future development are truly frightening. A person with Stewie's intelligence and technological abilities, but without genuine empathy or moral constraints, represents one of the most dangerous personality types imaginable. As we reach the end of our deep dive into Stewie Griffin's disturbing psychology, it's clear that this character represents far more than simple cartoon comedy. The writers of Family Guy have created a complex psychological portrait of a brilliant but fundamentally damaged individual whose intelligence has become both his greatest asset and his most dangerous weakness. Stewie's story serves as a dark commentary on the relationship between intelligence and emotional development. His character suggests that intellectual ability without emotional growth and genuine human connection can lead to the kind of isolated superiority complex that historically produces some of humanity's most dangerous individuals. The most unsettling aspect of Stewie's character is how his journey reflects real-world concerns about gifted children who don't receive proper emotional support and guidance. His psychological isolation, manipulative tendencies, and inability to form genuine relationships are all documented risks for highly intelligent individuals who don't develop healthy coping mechanisms. What makes Family Guy's portrayal particularly effective is how it disguises these serious psychological themes within absurd comedy. Viewers can laugh at Stewie's antics while unconsciously absorbing a much darker message about the potential consequences of emotional neglect and intellectual isolation. The show's writers have created a character who forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of intelligence, morality, and human connection. Stewie Griffin isn't just a funny cartoon baby. He's a warning about what happens when brilliance develops without wisdom, when intelligence grows without empathy, and when technological ability advances without moral development. If you found this exploration of Stewie's psychology as fascinating and disturbing as I did, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden meanings behind your favorite animated characters. Leave a comment below with your thoughts about Stewie's character development and whether you think there's hope for his psychological growth. And if you're ready to have your mind blown again, check out our video about the dark secrets hidden in SpongeBob SquarePants that will completely change how you see that show forever. Trust me, once you see what we've uncovered, you'll never look at Bikini Bottom the same way again. Have you ever wondered why Meg Griffin is treated so terribly by her own family? What you're about to discover will completely change how you see Family Guy forever. I'm talking about hidden lore, deleted scenes, and creator secrets that explain everything about the most hated character on television. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at Meg the same way again. But before we dive into these shocking revelations, let me ask you something. How many times have you watched Peter literally abuse his daughter and just laughed it off? How many times have you seen Lois completely ignore Meg's cries for help? What if I told you there's a disturbing reason behind all of this, and it's way darker than you think? Let's start with something that will blow your mind. Meg Griffin wasn't always supposed to be the punching bag of the Griffin family. In the original concept art and early story treatments, Meg was designed to be the voice of reason, the straight man character who would call out the family's absurd behavior. She was meant to be relatable, intelligent, and the character viewers would connect with most. But something changed during production that transformed her into the most abused character in animated television history. The transformation of Meg Griffin began with a simple creative decision that snowballed into something much more sinister. Seth MacFarlane and the writing team discovered that having Meg be the target of jokes created an easy comedic formula. Need a quick laugh? Have someone insult Meg. Running short on time? Make Meg the butt of a cruel joke. What started as occasional comic relief became systematic psychological torture disguised as family entertainment. Here's where it gets really disturbing. The writers didn't just randomly choose Meg to be the family scapegoat. They specifically crafted her character to represent every teenage girl who feels invisible, unloved, and rejected by their family. Think about it. Meg's experiences mirror the real struggles of millions of teenagers who feel like outsiders in their own homes. The show takes these genuine feelings of adolescent pain and turns them into punchlines for adult entertainment. But wait, there's more. Did you know that Lacey Chabert, the original voice of Meg, left the show after just one season? The official reason given was scheduling conflicts, but industry insiders tell a different story. Chabert reportedly became uncomfortable with the increasingly cruel direction of Meg's character. She allegedly expressed concerns about the psychological implications of voicing a character who suffered such relentless abuse, even in a cartoon format. When Mila Kunis took over the role, she brought a different energy to Meg, but the character's treatment only got worse. The writers seemed to interpret Kunis's stronger vocal presence as permission to heap even more abuse on Meg. It's as if they felt they needed to work harder to break down this version of the character, leading to increasingly disturbing storylines and more brutal family dynamics. Let's talk about the episode that was so controversial it was partially rewritten before airing. In the original version of Barely Legal, Meg's obsession with Brian was portrayed much more sympathetically. The initial script showed Meg as a lonely teenager desperately seeking any form of affection, with Brian genuinely caring about her well-being. But the network demanded changes, wanting more comedic moments at Meg's expense. The final version transformed Meg's legitimate emotional needs into creepy stalker behavior, making her the villain of her own story. Here's something that will make your skin crawl. The show's writers have admitted in interviews that they use Meg as a testing ground for how far they can push controversial content. If a joke about domestic abuse, mental illness, or teenage depression doesn't work with other characters, they try it with Meg first. She's literally a guinea pig for the most disturbing content the show produces. The reasoning? If viewers are already conditioned to see Meg as deserving of mistreatment, they are less likely to object to increasingly dark humor. The psychological profile of Meg Griffin reveals something truly heartbreaking. She exhibits classic symptoms of severe depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Her desperate attempts to fit in, her willingness to endure abuse for even momentary acceptance, and her complete lack of self-worth all point to a character who has been systematically broken down by years of family trauma. The show presents this as comedy, but it's actually a textbook case study of emotional and psychological abuse. But here's where the lore gets really twisted. There's an unaired episode from Season 3 that was deemed too dark for broadcast. In this episode, titled Meg's Breaking Point, the character finally snaps and confronts her family about their treatment of her. The episode was fully animated and voiced before being pulled from the schedule. According to leaked production notes, the episode ended with Meg attempting to leave the family permanently, only to be guilt-tripped into staying by a manipulative speech from Peter about how the family needs her to abuse. The censored content doesn't stop there. Multiple episodes have had scenes removed that showed the long-term psychological effects of the family's treatment of Meg. These deleted scenes included Meg self-harming, having panic attacks, and showing signs of dissociation during family interactions. The network apparently felt these realistic consequences of abuse were too heavy for a comedy show, but they were perfectly fine with the abuse itself continuing episode after episode. Let's examine the most disturbing aspect of Meg's character development. Over the years, she's been conditioned to believe she deserves the mistreatment she receives. This is called learned helplessness, a psychological phenomenon where abuse victims begin to accept their situation as normal and stop trying to escape or improve their circumstances. The show has documented this process in real time, showing viewers exactly how psychological abuse breaks down a person's will to resist. Family Guy's treatment of Meg becomes even more disturbing when you consider the show's massive influence on popular culture. Millions of viewers, including impressionable teenagers, watch this show and learn that it's acceptable and even funny to systematically torment family members who are perceived as different or unpopular. The show has normalized family dysfunction to a degree that's genuinely concerning for child psychologists and family therapists. The voice acting reveals another layer of this disturbing lore. Mila Kunis has admitted in interviews that voicing Meg's more heartbreaking moments genuinely affects her emotionally. She's described having to take breaks during recording sessions when Meg's dialogue becomes too realistic in its portrayal of despair and hopelessness. The fact that professional voice actors struggle with this content should tell us something about how genuinely dark it really is. There's also the hidden symbolism in Meg's character design that most viewers never notice. Her pink beanie isn't just a fashion choice. It's meant to represent her attempt to hide and protect herself from the world. Her oversized clothes are armor against judgment and criticism. Even her glasses represent her desire to see the world clearly, while feeling that the world refuses to see her at all. Every aspect of her appearance tells the story of someone trying to disappear. The show's international versions reveal even more disturbing lore about Meg. In several countries, episodes featuring extreme Meg abuse have been edited or banned entirely. Some international broadcasters have added content warnings specifically for Meg-centric episodes, treating them as potentially harmful content rather than simple comedy. This raises serious questions about why American audiences are considered more accepting of this type of content. Here's something that will shock you about the show's merchandise and marketing. Despite being a main character, Meg is systematically excluded from most Family Guy promotional materials. Official merchandise featuring the Griffin family often leaves Meg out entirely, or places her in the background. This marketing strategy mirrors the character's treatment in the show itself, making her invisible even in promotional contexts. The fan community's relationship with Meg reveals the character's true cultural impact. While most characters have dedicated fan bases, Meg's fans are primarily people who identify with feeling like family outcasts themselves. The character has become an unintentional symbol for anyone who's ever felt unloved, unwanted, or systematically mistreated by those who should care for them most. This wasn't the creator's intention, but it's become Meg's most significant cultural legacy. Recent seasons have included subtle hints that the writers are beginning to recognize the problematic nature of Meg's treatment. There have been episodes where her family's behavior toward her is called out by other characters, and moments where Meg shows unexpected strength and self-respect. However, these moments are always followed by a return to the status quo, suggesting that the show is trapped by its own established dynamics. The most disturbing piece of Family Guy lore involving Meg comes from a writer's room story that was leaked several years ago. During the creation of an episode focused on Meg's birthday, the writing staff apparently spent an entire day brainstorming ways to make her special day as miserable as possible. The goal wasn't comedy. It was seeing how creatively they could torture the character psychologically while maintaining the show's tone. This reveals a level of systematic cruelty in the creative process that goes far beyond simple comedic writing. But perhaps the most shocking revelation about Meg Griffin is what she represents in terms of the show's larger themes. Family Guy isn't actually a show about a dysfunctional family learning to love each other despite their flaws. It's a show about how families can systematically destroy their most vulnerable members while convincing themselves and others that it's all harmless fun. Meg is the canary in the coal mine, the character whose treatment reveals the true darkness lurking beneath the show's comedic surface. The psychological research that's been conducted on Family Guy's impact specifically cites Meg's treatment as potentially harmful to viewers who identify with her character. Studies have shown that prolonged exposure to this type of normalized family abuse can actually affect how viewers perceive their own family dynamics. Young people who see themselves in Meg might begin to accept similar treatment in their own lives as normal or deserved. What makes this even more concerning is the show's longevity and cultural penetration. Meg Griffin has been suffering this abuse for over 2 decades, across hundreds of episodes, reaching billions of viewers worldwide. The character has become one of television's most recognizable symbols of systematic family scapegoating, and that influence extends far beyond entertainment into real social attitudes about family dynamics and acceptable behavior. The voice direction for Meg's character provides another window into how deliberately her suffering is crafted. Voice directors reportedly give specific instructions to emphasize Meg's pain, disappointment, and desperation in ways that make these emotions more pronounced and uncomfortable. The goal isn't just to make her a comedic target, but to make her suffering feel authentic enough to create a specific type of uncomfortable humor that some viewers apparently find entertaining. Industry insiders have revealed that several guest stars have refused to participate in episodes that focused heavily on Meg's mistreatment. Some notable actors and comedians have reportedly declined guest appearances specifically because they were uncomfortable contributing to storylines that portrayed systematic family abuse as comedic entertainment. This behind-the-scenes resistance suggests that even entertainment professionals recognize something disturbing about Meg's treatment. The international psychological community has actually used Family Guy, and specifically Meg's character arc, as a case study in how popular media can normalize abuse dynamics. The show is frequently cited in academic papers about media influence on social attitudes toward family violence and psychological abuse. Meg Griffin has become an unintentional but powerful example of how entertainment can shape cultural attitudes toward vulnerable populations. Here's the most disturbing realization of all. The systematic abuse of Meg Griffin isn't just a byproduct of lazy comedy writing or poor character development. It's a carefully maintained dynamic that serves a specific function in the show's structure. Meg exists to absorb all the darkness that would otherwise make the other characters completely unlikable. She's a lightning rod for cruelty, allowing Peter, Lois, and the others to commit terrible acts, while still being positioned as the protagonists viewers should root for. The merchandising data reveals something equally troubling about how the character is perceived by the show's marketing department. Internal documents from licensing deals show that Meg-focused products consistently underperform compared to other characters, leading to a systematic exclusion from product lines. This creates a feedback loop where the character's treatment in the show influences her commercial viability, which then influences how she's treated in future episodes. Family Guy's treatment of Meg Griffin represents something much darker than simple comedy, or even typical dysfunctional family dynamics. It's a systematic portrayal of how families can destroy their most vulnerable members while maintaining a facade of normalcy and even affection. The show has documented this process across hundreds of episodes, creating what may be television's most comprehensive depiction of long-term psychological abuse, disguised as entertainment. The character of Meg Griffin started as a typical teenage daughter character, but evolved into something much more disturbing. She's become a symbol of how systematic mistreatment can break down a person's sense of self-worth and hope. The show's writers have created a character whose primary function is to suffer, and they've done it with such consistency and creativity that it reveals something genuinely troubling about how our culture views acceptable targets for cruelty and abuse. So the next time you watch Family Guy and see Meg being mistreated by her family, remember that you're not just watching a simple cartoon comedy. You're witnessing the most comprehensive portrayal of systematic family abuse ever broadcast as entertainment. And the disturbing lore behind this character reveals truths about our culture that are far more unsettling than anything you'll see in a typical horror movie. The real question isn't why Meg is treated so badly, but why millions of viewers have been conditioned to find that treatment entertaining rather than horrifying. Picture this. You're watching Family Guy, laughing at Peter's latest ridiculous scheme, when suddenly you realize there's an entire universe of hidden stories, dark secrets, and mind-bending connections that you've been missing this whole time. Today, we're diving deep into the most shocking Family Guy lore that will completely change how you see the Griffin family forever. What if I told you that Brian Griffin has died multiple times throughout the series, and the Brian we know today might not even be the original? Or that Stewie's sexuality has been planned from the very beginning in ways that most fans never picked up on? We're about to uncover secrets that even die-hard Family Guy fans have overlooked. And trust me, some of these revelations will blow your mind. Let's start with something that sounds impossible but is actually confirmed canon. The Griffin family exists in a multiverse where infinite versions of themselves are living completely different lives. This isn't just a throwaway gag for a few episodes. Seth MacFarlane and the writers have created an intricate web of parallel universes that explains some of the show's biggest mysteries and most confusing timeline issues. Remember that episode where Stewie and Brian travel to different universes? That wasn't just a one-off adventure. Those alternate realities are constantly affecting the main timeline in ways the show rarely explicitly explains. In one universe, the Griffins are all dogs. In another, everyone's gender is swapped. But here's the kicker. Characters from these alternate dimensions have actually crossed over into the main timeline without anyone noticing. The most disturbing example involves Brian's death and resurrection. When Brian was killed by that car, the Brian that Stewie brought back wasn't technically the same Brian. The time travel created a paradox that split Brian's consciousness across multiple timelines. This explains why Brian's personality has shifted so dramatically over the years. He's literally not the same character anymore, and the show has been subtly hinting at this through his changing behavior patterns and contradictory character development. But Brian's multiversal confusion is nothing compared to what's really going on with Stewie Griffin. Most fans know that Stewie started as a one-dimensional evil baby stereotype, but the evolution of his character reveals something much more complex than simple character development. Stewie's intelligence isn't just advanced for a baby. It's literally supernatural, and there's evidence throughout the series that suggests he's not entirely human. Seth MacFarlane has dropped hints in interviews that Stewie's advanced intelligence comes from genetic experiments conducted by his real father. And no, we're not talking about Peter. The show has never definitively confirmed Peter as Stewie's biological father, despite what most fans assume. There are multiple episodes where Stewie's parentage is questioned, and when you piece together all the clues, a shocking picture emerges. Consider this. Stewie has built time machines, death rays, and teleportation devices using materials he somehow acquires as an infant. He speaks with a sophisticated British accent, despite being born in Rhode Island to parents with American accents. He demonstrates knowledge of complex scientific principles that would challenge PhD researchers. This isn't just cartoon logic. It's the result of genetic manipulation by a character we've met but never suspected. Francis Griffin, Peter's father, isn't just a religious fanatic. He's been secretly involved in genetic research for decades, using his religious connections as a front for experimental work on human enhancement. Stewie's intelligence, his early violent tendencies, and even his eventual character growth are all part of a long-term experiment in human development. Francis has been observing Stewie's progress throughout the series, appearing in episodes specifically to monitor his development. This explains why Stewie's character has evolved from purely evil to complex and multifaceted. It's not character development. It's the natural progression of Francis's experiment, reaching different phases. Stewie's growing emotional intelligence and his complicated relationship with his sexuality aren't random character choices. They're predictable outcomes of genetic modifications designed to create a superior human being. Speaking of Stewie's sexuality, the show's handling of this aspect reveals another layer of hidden lore that most viewers miss completely. Seth MacFarlane planned Stewie's sexual orientation from the very beginning, but not in the way most people think. Stewie's attraction to various characters throughout the series follows a specific pattern that reveals something disturbing about his psychological development. Every character Stewie has shown romantic or sexual interest in shares specific traits that connect back to his genetic programming. His crushes aren't random attractions. They're responses to psychological triggers implanted during his genetic modification. This is why his attractions seem inconsistent to casual viewers, but follow a clear pattern when analyzed closely. The most shocking revelation about Stewie's sexuality is that it's not actually about gender preference at all. It's about his subconscious recognition of genetic compatibility. Francis programmed Stewie to be attracted to individuals who would produce genetically superior offspring, regardless of gender. This explains why Stewie's attractions seem to shift and change, because they're not based on personal preference, but on biological programming he doesn't understand. But Stewie isn't the only Griffin family member hiding genetic secrets. Meg Griffin's constant suffering and social rejection aren't just running gags. They're the result of her being a failed experiment from the same program that created Stewie. Meg represents what happens when Francis's genetic modifications go wrong, creating someone intelligent enough to understand their social failure, but not intelligent enough to overcome it. This is why Meg occasionally displays flashes of brilliance or unexpected competence that disappear as quickly as they appear. She's fighting against genetic programming designed to suppress her abilities. Every time Meg almost achieves success or happiness, her modified genetics kick in to sabotage her progress. It's not bad luck or poor writing, it's built-in failure programming. The evidence for this theory is scattered throughout hundreds of episodes. But it becomes undeniable when you realize that Meg's failures always occur at crucial moments that would otherwise lead to her escape from the family's dysfunction. She's not meant to escape because her failure is essential to Francis's long-term experimental goals. Peter Griffin's role in this genetic conspiracy is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of all. Peter isn't the lovable idiot he appears to be. His stupidity is a carefully constructed facade designed to hide his role as an unwitting test subject and specimen collector for Francis's experiments. Peter's incredible survival rate, despite constant dangerous situations, isn't cartoon logic. It's enhanced genetic durability. Think about it. Peter has survived explosions, falls, poisonings, and countless other incidents that should have killed him multiple times over. His body's ability to recover from extreme trauma isn't natural. It's the result of genetic modifications that Francis administered without Peter's knowledge. Peter's stupidity serves as the perfect cover for these experiments, because no one suspects an idiot of being involved in complex genetic research. Peter's job history reveals the true scope of this conspiracy. Every workplace Peter has been associated with has connections to genetic research, pharmaceutical development, or human experimentation. The brewery, the toy factory, his various short-term employment, they're all fronts for research facilities where Peter unknowingly participates in ongoing experiments. Lois Griffin's background contains the most shocking revelations of all. Her wealthy family isn't just rich. They're one of the founding families of a secret organization dedicated to human genetic advancement. The Pewterschmidt fortune comes from decades of illegal human experimentation, and Lois's marriage to Peter wasn't a love story. It was an arranged pairing designed to produce genetically diverse test subjects. Lois knows about the experiments. She's always known. Her seemingly irrational decisions to stay with Peter despite his behavior make perfect sense when you realize she's not a victim of his stupidity. She's his handler. Every major life decision the Griffin family makes serves the research goals of Francis's genetic program. This explains why Lois alternates between loving mother and neglectful parent. Her maternal instincts conflict with her research obligations, creating the inconsistent parenting that defines her character. When she's nurturing and protective, she's responding to genuine maternal feelings. When she's dismissive or cruel, she's following research protocols that require emotional distance from test subjects. The most chilling aspect of Lois's involvement is that she genuinely loves her children while simultaneously facilitating their use as experimental subjects. She's trapped between her role as a mother and her obligations to the genetic research program that controls her family's life. Chris Griffin appears to be the only family member not directly involved in the genetic experiments, but his role is actually the most important of all. Chris represents the control group in Francis's multi-generational study. His normal intelligence, typical teenage behavior, and relatively stable personality provide the baseline against which Stewie's enhancements and Meg's failures are measured. But Chris isn't as normal as he appears. His artistic abilities and occasional flashes of insight suggest that he's inherited some of the genetic modifications without the extreme effects seen in his siblings. Chris might be the successful outcome Francis has been working toward, a genetically enhanced human who appears completely normal while possessing subtle advantages. The show has been building toward a revelation about Chris's true nature for years. His relationship with his family members, his inexplicable survival of dangerous situations, and his ability to succeed despite apparent limitations all point to him being the ultimate product of Francis's genetic program. Cleveland Brown's departure from Family Guy wasn't just about launching a spin-off show. Cleveland discovered the truth about the Griffin family's genetic experiments and had to be removed from Quahog before he could expose the conspiracy. His return to the show coincided with his acceptance of a role in maintaining the cover-up. Cleveland's friendship with Peter serves a specific purpose in Francis's research program. As Peter's closest friend, Cleveland provides emotional stability that prevents Peter from asking too many questions about his family's unusual circumstances. Cleveland's laid-back personality and reluctance to confront difficult truths make him the perfect, unwitting accomplice. The most disturbing aspect of Cleveland's involvement is that he's begun to suspect the truth but chooses to remain silent because he fears the consequences of exposure. Several episodes hint at Cleveland's growing awareness that something isn't right with the Griffin family, but he consistently chooses ignorance over investigation. Joe Swanson's paralysis isn't the result of a police accident as commonly believed. Joe discovered evidence of the genetic experiments during a routine investigation and was deliberately paralyzed to prevent him from pursuing the case further. His continued presence in the neighborhood serves as a warning to other potential investigators about the consequences of getting too close to the truth. Joe's incredible upper body strength and his ability to function as an effective police officer despite his disability aren't just inspirational character traits. They're evidence of genetic enhancement designed to compensate for his paralysis. Francis provided Joe with genetic modifications that enhance his remaining abilities in exchange for his silence about the experiments. The relationship between Joe and his family reflects his conflicted feelings about his situation. He genuinely loves his wife and son, but he knows that his involvement in covering up the Griffin family conspiracy puts them at risk. This explains the tension and occasional hostility in Joe's family interactions. Quagmire's over-sexualized personality and his antagonistic relationship with Brian serve specific purposes in maintaining the genetic conspiracy. Quagmire's promiscuity provides Francis with a steady stream of genetic material from diverse sources, expanding the database available for future experiments. His hatred of Brian stems from his subconscious recognition that Brian represents a threat to the stability of the experimental environment. Quagmire's pilot career allows him to transport research materials and subjects without detection. His frequent travel provides the perfect cover for moving genetic samples, experimental equipment, and even human subjects between research facilities. The show has never fully explained how Quagmire maintains his lifestyle on a pilot's salary, but his involvement in the genetic research program provides the missing financial motivation. The most shocking aspect of Quagmire's role is that his sexual behavior isn't driven by personal desire, but by genetic programming designed to maximize reproductive output for research purposes. Quagmire is as much a victim of Francis's experiments as the Griffin family, but his programming prevents him from recognizing his exploitation. Dr. Hartman's medical incompetence isn't genuine stupidity. It's deliberate malpractice designed to cover up the genetic modifications in his patients. Every member of the Griffin family displays physical and psychological traits that would be immediately obvious to any competent physician, but Dr. Hartman consistently fails to notice or investigate these anomalies. Dr. Hartman's medical practice serves as the primary interface between Francis's research program and the subjects. Routine medical appointments provide opportunities to monitor the effects of genetic modifications, administer new treatments, and collect biological samples without arousing suspicion. The families trust Dr. Hartman with their health, never suspecting that he's actively working against their best interests. The most disturbing aspect of Dr. Hartman's involvement is that he genuinely believes he's helping his patients while simultaneously facilitating their exploitation. Francis has convinced Dr. Hartman that the genetic modifications are beneficial medical treatments, not experimental procedures. Dr. Hartman's incompetence isn't an act. It's programmed blindness to the ethical implications of his actions. The town of Quahog itself has been specifically chosen and modified to support Francis's genetic research program. The unusual concentration of bizarre characters and impossible situations isn't coincidental. It's the result of decades of careful population management and environmental manipulation. Every major location in Quahog serves a purpose in the research program. The Drunken Clam provides a controlled social environment for observing subject behavior. The Quahog Mall offers opportunities for psychological testing through consumer behavior analysis. Even the local news station serves as the information control mechanism to prevent subjects from learning about their situation. The most shocking revelation about Quahog is that many of its residents aren't permanent inhabitants, but rotating research subjects brought in for specific experiments. The town's population includes people from around the world who believe they're participating in legitimate research studies, while actually serving as unknowing test subjects for genetic modification programs. Mayor West's apparent insanity isn't a character quirk. It's the result of early genetic modification experiments that damaged his brain. Francis keeps Mayor West in power because his unpredictable behavior provides perfect cover for the unusual events that result from ongoing research activities. No one questions strange occurrences in a town run by an insane mayor. The supernatural and science fiction elements that occasionally appear in Family Guy aren't random cartoon logic. They're leaked information about the true scope of Francis's research program. Time travel, alternate dimensions, and genetic modifications are all real technologies being developed and tested in Quahog under the cover of cartoon impossibility. When Stewie and Brian travel through time, they're using technology developed by Francis's research team. When characters encounter aliens or supernatural beings, they're interacting with other victims of genetic experimentation whose modifications have progressed to extreme levels. The show presents these events as comedy to prevent viewers from recognizing them as documentations of actual scientific research. The most terrifying aspect of this revelation is that Family Guy isn't entirely fictional. Seth MacFarlane has been using the show as a way to reveal information about real genetic experiments while maintaining plausible deniability by presenting the information as comedy. The more ridiculous the situation appears, the more likely it is to contain genuine information about secret research programs. This explains why Family Guy has remained popular despite its apparently random and inconsistent storytelling. Viewers subconsciously recognize the truth hidden within the comedy, creating a psychological response that feels like entertainment, but actually represents recognition of suppressed knowledge about human genetic manipulation. The implications of this hidden lore extend far beyond the show itself. If Family Guy is documenting real genetic research, then similar programs might be operating in communities around the world, using entertainment media as cover for revealing their activities. The show's international popularity might be part of a larger program to gradually accustomate global audiences to the reality of human genetic modification. The Griffin family's story isn't ending with the revelation of their experimental nature. It's building toward something much larger. Francis's research program has been preparing for a global expansion of genetic modification, using the Griffin family as proof of concept for technologies that will eventually be applied to entire populations. Stewie's evolution from evil baby to complex character represents the successful completion of the first phase of Francis's program. The next phase involves scaling up the genetic modifications to affect larger groups while maintaining the same level of control and observation that has been perfected through decades of work with the Griffin family. The most shocking aspect of this expansion is that it's already begun. Communities around the world are experiencing increases in unusual behavior, genetic anomalies, and impossible survival rates that mirror the patterns established in Quahog. Family Guy isn't just entertainment. It's the instruction manual for recognizing the signs of genetic modification in your own community. Seth MacFarlane's other shows, American Dad and The Cleveland Show, represent expansions of the same research program into different demographic groups and geographic locations. Each show tests different aspects of genetic modification and social control, using comedy as cover for documenting real experimental results. The interconnected universe of Seth MacFarlane's shows isn't just creative world building. It's evidence of a coordinated research program that spans multiple communities and test populations. Characters who appear in multiple shows aren't just cameos, they're research subjects whose modifications require monitoring across different experimental environments. This hidden lore transforms Family Guy from a simple, animated comedy into something much more significant and disturbing. The show serves as both entertainment and documentation, comedy and confession, fiction and fact. Every episode contains information that viewers are meant to process subconsciously, while consciously dismissing it as cartoon nonsense. The most important aspect of understanding this hidden lore is recognizing that it changes everything about how we interpret not just Family Guy, but all entertainment media. If one show can serve as cover for revealing information about secret research programs, then other shows might be doing the same thing with different types of hidden information. The Griffin family's story continues to unfold with each new episode, gradually revealing more details about the genetic experiments that define their existence, while maintaining the comedic facade that prevents viewers from taking the revelations seriously. The show's longevity isn't just due to its humor, it's due to its function as an ongoing documentary of human genetic research. As we've discovered today, Family Guy contains layers of hidden lore that transform it from simple entertainment into something much more complex and significant. The Griffin family's genetic modifications, Francis's research program, and the town of Quahog's role as an experimental environment create a narrative that extends far beyond what appears on screen. Understanding this hidden lore doesn't ruin the show's entertainment value. It enhances it by providing context for character behaviors and plot developments that otherwise seem random or inconsistent. Every joke becomes a potential clue, every character interaction becomes a data point, and every impossible situation becomes evidence of technologies that officially don't exist. The most important takeaway from exploring Family Guy's hidden lore is the recognition that entertainment media can serve multiple purposes simultaneously. Shows that appear to be simple comedy might be documenting real events. Characters that seem fictional might be based on real people, and situations that appear impossible might be representations of secret technologies. This revelation about Family Guy opens up possibilities for understanding other animated shows, comedy series, and even dramatic programs in new ways. The techniques used to hide information in plain sight through comedy and cartoon logic might be more common than we ever imagined. The Griffin family's story serves as a warning about the potential consequences of genetic modification research conducted without proper oversight or ethical considerations. Their suffering, despite its comedic presentation, represents real human costs of scientific advancement pursued without regard for individual dignity or consent. But their story also offers hope, because understanding the truth about their situation provides the knowledge necessary to recognize and resist similar programs in real life. By learning to see through the comedic facade, we develop the critical thinking skills needed to identify other instances where entertainment media might be used to hide important information. Family Guy will never look the same once you understand its hidden lore. But that's exactly the point. The show challenges viewers to look beyond surface appearances and question the nature of reality itself. In a world where truth is increasingly difficult to distinguish from fiction, Family Guy provides a masterclass in hidden information and the power of comedy to reveal uncomfortable truths. The next time you watch Family Guy, pay attention to the details that don't quite make sense, the character behaviors that seem inconsistent, and the impossible situations that resolve too easily. You might discover that you're not just watching a cartoon, you're witnessing the documentation of one of the most significant secret research programs in human history. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled twice, and that Seth MacFarlane almost died on September 11th, which completely changed the show's trajectory forever? What if I told you that the Griffin family house has a secret basement that's been hidden in plain sight for over 2 decades? Or that Stewie's sexuality was originally planned to be revealed in a completely different way that would have shocked audiences worldwide? Welcome back to another deep dive into animated television history. I'm your host, and today we're exploring the most mind-blowing Family Guy lore that even die-hard fans probably don't know about. From behind-the-scenes secrets that nearly destroyed the show to hidden Easter eggs that connect to other animated universes, this is going to be one wild ride through Quahog and beyond. But before we jump into this rabbit hole of shocking revelations, make sure you hit that subscribe button because we're about to uncover some seriously explosive content that YouTube's algorithm doesn't want you to see. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never watch Family Guy the same way again. Let's start with something that will absolutely blow your mind. Seth MacFarlane was originally supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11 on September 11th, 2001. Yes, you heard that right. The creator of Family Guy was supposed to be on the first plane that hit the World Trade Center. He missed the flight by just 10 minutes because of a hangover and a travel agent who gave him the wrong departure time. This near-death experience completely changed his perspective on life and directly influenced the darker, more satirical direction that Family Guy would eventually take in its later seasons. Think about this for a second. If MacFarlane had been on that flight, we would never have gotten the revival seasons of Family Guy, American Dad, or The Orville. The entire landscape of animated comedy would be completely different. But here's where it gets even more twisted. MacFarlane has admitted in interviews that this experience made him realize how fragile life really is, which is why the show became increasingly more nihilistic and dark as the years went on. The random violence, the complete disregard for character development, and the increasingly absurd situations all stem from this one life-changing moment. Now let's talk about something that will make you question everything you think you know about the Griffin family. The house at 31 Spooner Street has a secret basement that's been featured in multiple episodes. But here's what most people don't realize. This basement connects to a network of underground tunnels that run throughout all of Quahog. These tunnels have appeared in at least 7 different episodes across various seasons, but they're never explicitly connected or explained. In one episode, we see Peter emerge from a manhole cover near the drunken clam. In another, Stewie discovers a hidden passage behind his bedroom wall. That leads to what appears to be the same tunnel system. The most revealing moment comes in a throwaway gag where Brian is chasing a tennis ball and disappears down a storm drain, only to emerge from the Griffin's basement minutes later. This isn't just random comedy writing. There's actually a consistent underground geography to Quahog that the writers have been building for years. But here's where it gets really interesting. These tunnels connect to similar underground systems in other Seth MacFarlane shows. If you pay close attention to certain episodes of American Dad, you'll notice that the CIA headquarters has access to tunnels that look remarkably similar to the ones in Family Guy. There's even a brief scene in the Cleveland show where Cleveland falls through his floorboards and lands in what appears to be the same tunnel system before the scene cuts away. This suggests that all of MacFarlane's animated universes might actually be connected through this underground network. It's like a multiverse theory, but instead of parallel dimensions, it's all happening in the same world with hidden connections that most viewers never notice. Speaking of hidden connections, let's talk about Stewie Griffin and the most controversial aspect of his character development. Everyone knows that Stewie's sexuality has been a topic of debate for years, with MacFarlane giving contradictory statements about whether the character is gay, straight, or something else entirely. But here's what most people don't know. There was originally a planned storyline that would have definitively answered this question, and it was going to be revealed in the most shocking way possible. According to leaked production documents from 2008, there was a planned 2-part episode called Stewie's Choice that would have featured an adult version of Stewie traveling back in time to have a conversation with his infant self about his future identity. The adult Stewie was going to reveal that he's actually pansexual, and that his early obsession with matricide was actually a misdirected expression of his confusion about his own identity and place in the world. The episode was going to explore how Stewie's advanced intelligence and emotional maturity as an infant made him aware of concepts and feelings that he couldn't properly process or understand. His violent fantasies about Lois were supposed to represent his frustration with being trapped in a body and family situation that couldn't accommodate his true nature. It would have been groundbreaking television, addressing themes of identity, sexuality, and family dynamics in a way that animated comedy had never attempted before. But the episode was scrapped at the last minute because Fox executives were concerned about the potential backlash from conservative viewers and advertisers. Instead, we got the ambiguous approach that the show has maintained ever since, with Stewie's sexuality remaining deliberately unclear. MacFarlane has expressed regret about this decision in later interviews, saying that he wishes he had fought harder to tell that story. This brings us to one of the most shocking pieces of Family Guy lore that involves the show's cancellation and revival. Most fans know that Family Guy was canceled after 3 seasons and then brought back due to strong DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns. But what most people don't know is that during the cancellation period, there was a secret season that was produced but never aired. This lost season, sometimes referred to as Season 0, by animators who worked on it, consisted of 13 episodes that were completed between 2003 and 2004. These episodes were darker, more experimental, and pushed boundaries that even the current version of Family Guy wouldn't dare cross. One episode featured Peter accidentally killing a neighbor and the entire family having to cover it up. Another showed Brian dealing with severe depression and contemplating suicide after a failed relationship. The most controversial episode in this lost season was titled The Real Quahog, and it was essentially a behind-the-scenes look at what the Griffin family's life would be like if they were real people instead of cartoon characters. It showed them dealing with real consequences for their actions, real trauma from their experiences, and real psychological damage from the constant chaos in their lives. Peter was portrayed as an alcoholic with severe brain damage from his countless accidents. Lois was shown struggling with depression and prescription drug abuse. Chris was in therapy for the emotional abuse he'd suffered, and Meg was revealed to be self-harming as a way to cope with her family's treatment of her. This episode was deemed too dark and realistic for television, even by Adult Swim standards. The entire lost season was shelved, and when Family Guy was revived in 2005, the show went in a completely different direction, embracing the absurdist comedy that defines the modern era of the show. But here's the really crazy part. Some of the storylines and jokes from these lost episodes have been recycled and incorporated into later seasons, but in much more sanitized and comedic ways. If you know what to look for, you can actually spot elements from the lost seasons scattered throughout episodes from seasons 4 through 10. Let's shift gears and talk about something that will completely change how you view the show's animation and production. Family Guy uses a technique called limited animation, which is common in television cartoons, but they've hidden several advanced animation techniques throughout the series that most viewers never notice. There are at least 12 episodes that feature what animation experts call rotoscoping, where live-action footage is traced over to create more realistic movement. This technique was used primarily in fight scenes and dance sequences, but it was also used in some of the show's most emotional moments to create more nuanced facial expressions and body language. The most impressive example of this is in the episode where Brian and Stewie are trapped in a bank vault. The entire conversation between the two characters was actually performed by live actors first, with Seth MacFarlane and another voice actor acting out the scene in a recording studio. This footage was then rotoscoped to create the animation, which is why that episode feels so much more intimate and realistic than typical Family Guy episodes. This technique has been used sparingly throughout the series, always in moments where the writers wanted to create genuine emotional connection with the audience. It's one of the reasons why certain episodes feel so much more impactful than others, even though most viewers can't pinpoint exactly why. Now let's dive into something that connects Family Guy to real-world events in ways that are both fascinating and slightly disturbing. The show has accidentally predicted or coincidentally referenced several major news events before they actually happened. This isn't just about the Boston Marathon bombing episode that was pulled from circulation. There are dozens of smaller predictions and coincidences that suggest either incredible luck or some kind of insider knowledge. In a 2001 episode, there's a throwaway joke about airport security being ineffective that aired just 2 months before September 11th. A 2003 episode featured a gag about a pandemic shutting down the world that's eerily similar to what happened with COVID-19 17 years later. There's even an episode from 2007 that jokes about social media destroying democracy, which feels remarkably prescient given everything that's happened with Facebook and Twitter in recent years. The most unsettling prediction came in a 2004 episode that featured a throwaway gag about a reality TV star becoming president and destroying American foreign policy. This was 5 years before Donald Trump even appeared on The Apprentice, and 13 years before he actually became president. These coincidences have led to conspiracy theories about the show's writers having inside information or being part of some larger cultural manipulation scheme. While that's obviously nonsense, it does highlight how satirical comedy often accidentally stumbles onto truth by exaggerating current trends to their logical extremes. Here's something that will blow your mind about the show's voice acting. Seth MacFarlane doesn't just voice multiple main characters. He actually performs entire conversations with himself. acting out complex emotional scenes between different characters in real time. This requires an incredible level of vocal and emotional control that most people don't appreciate. But here's the really impressive part. McFarlane has admitted that he sometimes gets so deep into character during recording sessions that he actually forgets which voice he's supposed to be using. There are outtakes where you can hear him starting a line as Peter and finishing it as Brian, or beginning as Stewie and ending as Quagmire. These mistakes are usually caught in editing, but occasionally they make it into the final episode as intentional jokes or character moments. The most impressive vocal performance in the show's history is probably the episode where Stewie and Brian are trapped in the vault, which we mentioned earlier. McFarlane performed both sides of that 20-minute conversation live, switching between characters fluidly while maintaining the emotional authenticity of both performances. It's a masterclass in voice acting that most people take for granted because they're focused on the jokes and story. Let's talk about something that connects Family Guy to the broader world of animation in ways that most people never realize. The show has actually influenced the development of animation technology in significant ways. The techniques developed for Family Guy's cutaway gags have been adopted by other animated shows, and some of the software innovations created specifically for Family Guy are now industry standard. The show was one of the first animated series to use digital ink and paint techniques exclusively, abandoning traditional cell animation years before other shows made the switch. This allowed for more complex visual effects and faster production times, but it also created a distinctive visual style that influenced countless other animated series. More importantly, Family Guy pioneered several techniques for creating rapid scene transitions and visual gags that are now used throughout animated television. The quick cuts, the seamless transitions between reality and fantasy sequences, and the integration of different animation styles within single episodes all originated with Family Guy and have since become standard tools in animated comedy. Here's something that will surprise you about the show's writing process. Unlike most television shows, Family Guy doesn't use a traditional writer's room structure. Instead, the writers work in small teams of 2 or 3 people, developing individual segments and gags that are then assembled into full episodes by a separate editorial team. This explains why Family Guy episodes often feel like collections of loosely connected skits rather than coherent narratives. It's not a bug in the writing process, it's a feature. The show is designed to work like a comedy variety show, with each segment standing on its own while contributing to a larger comedic experience. The cutaway gags are written by a completely different team of writers who specialize in creating short-form comedy content. These writers often don't even know what episodes their gags will be used in. They just create libraries of content that the editorial team draws from when assembling episodes. This system allows for incredible creative flexibility, but it also means that the show's quality can vary wildly from episode to episode, depending on which combination of writers and editors are working on any given installment. Now let's explore something that connects Family Guy to other forms of media in unexpected ways. The show has actually influenced the development of internet meme culture more than most people realize. Many of the comedic techniques that are now standard in online comedy content originated with Family Guy's approach to humor. The random cutaway gag structure that defines Family Guy is essentially the same format used in modern social media content, where short, disconnected pieces of entertainment are strung together to create longer experiences. The show's influence can be seen in everything from TikTok videos to YouTube compilations to internet memes. More specifically, Family Guy popularized the idea of referential humor that doesn't require deep knowledge of the reference to be funny. The show's pop culture parodies work even if you don't know what's being parodied, which is now a fundamental principle of internet comedy. As we wrap up this deep dive into Family Guy lore, let's talk about the most shocking revelation of all. There's evidence to suggest that the show is actually much more carefully planned and deliberately crafted than its chaotic surface suggests. Despite appearing random and improvisational, Family Guy follows complex narrative patterns and character development arcs that span multiple seasons. The show uses what narrative theorists call spiral storytelling, where characters appear to remain static, but actually undergo subtle changes that accumulate over time. Peter may seem like the same character he was in Season 1, but if you watch carefully, you can see how his experiences have gradually shaped his worldview and behavior patterns. This sophisticated storytelling approach is disguised by the show's crude humor and seemingly random structure, but it's there for viewers who know how to look for it. It's one of the reasons why Family Guy has remained culturally relevant for over 2 decades, while many other animated comedies have faded into obscurity. The show's longevity isn't just due to its shock value or pop culture references. It's because underneath all the chaos and controversy, there's actually a carefully constructed narrative universe with consistent internal logic and genuine character development. So there you have it. Family Guy isn't just a random collection of offensive jokes and pop culture references. It's a complex, carefully crafted piece of entertainment that has influenced animation technology, comedy writing, internet culture, and narrative television in ways that most people never realize. These revelations should completely change how you watch the show going forward. Every episode contains layers of meaning, technical innovation, and cultural commentary that extend far beyond the surface-level humor. The Griffin family's adventures in Quahog are actually part of a much larger and more sophisticated entertainment universe than anyone could have imagined. If this video opened your eyes to the hidden depths of Family Guy, make sure you like and subscribe for more deep dives into the secret histories of your favorite shows. And let me know in the comments which piece of Family Guy lore surprised you the most. Until next time, keep looking for the hidden stories behind the stories you think you know. Have you ever wondered what happens when you dive deep into the chaotic world of Family Guy at 3 in the morning? Tonight, we're exploring the surprisingly intricate lore behind one of television's most outrageous animated families. And trust me, there are secrets hiding in plain sight that will completely change how you see this show forever. Picture this. You're settling in for the night, your mind racing with the day's stress, and you need something familiar yet engaging enough to help you drift off. Family Guy might seem like simple comedy on the surface, but beneath those crude jokes and cutaway gags lies a surprisingly complex universe filled with recurring mysteries, hidden connections, and character developments that span over 2 decades of television history. Let's start our journey in the fictional town of Quahog, Rhode Island, where the Griffin family has been causing mayhem since 1999. But here's something most viewers never notice. Quahog isn't just a random setting. The name itself comes from the Quahog clam, native to Rhode Island waters, and creator Seth MacFarlane chose this location specifically because Rhode Island represents the perfect blend of New England quaintness and working-class authenticity that defines the show's core identity. The Griffin House at 31 Spooner Street has been the epicenter of countless adventures. But have you ever stopped to consider the layout and how it defies basic architectural logic? The house seemingly changes size depending on the episode's needs, with rooms appearing and disappearing like something out of a fever dream. This isn't sloppy animation. It's actually a subtle running gag that reflects the show's relationship with reality itself. Peter Griffin, the patriarch of this dysfunctional clan, represents more than just comic relief. His character serves as a commentary on American masculinity in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Born in Francis Griffin's shadow, Peter's rebellious nature stems from years of religious oppression and emotional neglect. His mother, Mickey McFinnigan, reveals Peter's Irish heritage, explaining his love for drinking and fighting, but also his deep-seated need for acceptance and belonging. The complexity of Peter's psychology becomes apparent when you examine his relationship with his father-in-law, Carter Pewterschmidt. Despite Carter's obvious disdain for Peter, their dynamic reveals Peter's desperate need for patriarchal approval. This psychological wound drives many of Peter's most destructive behaviors, from his get-rich-quick schemes to his constant need to prove his worth through increasingly ridiculous stunts. Lois Griffin, voiced by the talented Alex Borstein, carries secrets that run deeper than most viewers realize. Born into the wealthy Pewterschmidt family, Lois chose to marry Peter against her family's wishes, but her motivations aren't purely romantic. Her character arc reveals a woman torn between her privileged upbringing and her desire for authenticity. The episodes where we glimpse her past as a rebellious teenager and young adult show someone who used Peter as an escape from the suffocating world of high society expectations. But here's where things get interesting. Lois possesses a dark side that emerges throughout the series. Her time as a kleptomaniac, her brief career as a boxer, and her moments of extreme violence suggest that beneath her suburban mother facade lies someone capable of extraordinary ruthlessness. This duality makes her one of the most psychologically complex characters in the entire series. Meg Griffin, often dismissed as the show's punching bag, actually represents one of television's most tragic figures when you examine her story closely. The eldest Griffin child endures constant abuse and neglect from her family, yet continues to seek their approval with heartbreaking persistence. Her character development over the years reveals someone who has internalized her family's treatment to the point where she believes she deserves their cruelty. The episodes that focus on Meg's inner life reveal depths of loneliness and desperation that border on the genuinely disturbing. Her brief moments of happiness, whether through fleeting romantic connections or temporary acceptance from her peers, become incredibly poignant when viewed against the backdrop of her usual suffering. Some fans theorize that Meg represents the collateral damage of dysfunctional family systems, showing how children can become scapegoats for their parents' unresolved issues. Chris Griffin, the middle child, embodies the show's approach to adolescent confusion and sexual awakening. His character walks the line between innocent and disturbing, reflecting the awkward reality of teenage development. Chris's artistic talents, particularly his drawing abilities, suggest hidden depths beneath his seemingly simple exterior. His relationship with his imaginary friend and his various romantic pursuits reveal someone struggling to understand his place in both his family and the wider world. The youngest Griffin, Stewie, presents perhaps the most fascinating character study in the entire series. Initially conceived as an evil genius baby bent on world domination and matricide, Stewie's character has evolved into something far more nuanced. His relationship with his sexuality, his friendship with Brian, and his gradual abandonment of his villainous schemes reflect a character coming to terms with his own identity in a world that doesn't understand him. Stewie's time travel adventures aren't just comedy devices, they represent his desire to escape or fix the circumstances of his existence. His future selves, whether successful or struggling, always seem dissatisfied with their lives, suggesting that Stewie's fundamental problem isn't his circumstances, but his inability to accept himself and his place in the world. Brian Griffin stands apart as the family's conscience, but his role as the moral center becomes increasingly problematic as the series progresses. His liberal politics, artistic pretensions, and romantic struggles make him a deeply flawed character who often embodies the worst aspects of intellectual arrogance. The show's treatment of Brian reflects its complicated relationship with its own political messaging and cultural commentary. Brian's death and resurrection storyline remains one of the most emotionally powerful arcs in the series, revealing just how central he had become to the show's emotional core. His relationship with Stewie provides some of the series' most genuine moments of connection and growth, offering a stark contrast to the chaos that defines most other character interactions. The extended cast of Quahog residents creates a rich tapestry of recurring characters that flesh out the show's universe. Glenn Quagmire, the Griffin's hypersexual neighbor, initially appears as simple comic relief, but deeper examination reveals a character struggling with serious psychological issues. His animosity toward Brian stems from more than just personality conflicts. It represents a clash between different approaches to masculinity and moral philosophy. Cleveland Brown's departure from the series to star in his own spin-off created a noticeable shift in the show's dynamic. His return brought back a stabilizing presence that had been missing, highlighting how important his character was to the group's chemistry. Cleveland's patient, reasonable nature often served as a counterpoint to Peter's impulsiveness and Quagmire's excess. Joe Swanson's character provides representation for disability in animation while avoiding most of the typical pitfalls. His determination to maintain his career as a police officer despite his paralysis, combined with his competitive nature and occasional outbursts of rage, creates a multifaceted character who refuses to be defined solely by his disability. The show's approach to continuity creates an interesting paradox. While individual episodes often ignore established character development and reset relationships to their baseline, certain elements carry forward throughout the series. Character deaths, major life changes, and relationship developments sometimes stick while others are completely forgotten by the next episode. This selective continuity reflects the show's unique position between traditional sitcom structure and the more serialized storytelling that has become common in modern television. The writers pick and choose which developments to maintain based on their comedic potential and character impact rather than strict adherence to realistic progression. The show's relationship with pop culture goes beyond simple references and parodies. Family Guy has become a cultural touchstone itself, with its cutaway gag structure influencing countless other animated series. The show's willingness to break the fourth wall and acknowledge its own existence as a television program creates a metatextual layer that rewards longtime viewers while potentially confusing newcomers. The series' cancellation and revival story has become part of its own mythology. The fan campaign that brought the show back from cancellation in 2005 demonstrated the passionate loyalty of its audience and gave the series a second chance that most canceled shows never receive. This resurrection allowed the show to evolve and mature in ways that might not have been possible during its original run. The animation style itself has undergone subtle but significant changes over the years. Early episodes featured rougher, more expressive character designs that gradually evolved into the cleaner, more standardized look of later seasons. These changes reflect both technological improvements and shifts in the show's production values as it became increasingly successful. Voice acting remains one of the show's greatest strengths, with Seth MacFarlane's versatility allowing him to voice multiple main characters while maintaining distinct personalities for each. The supporting voice cast, including Alex Borstein, Seth Green, and Mila Kunis, brings consistency and chemistry that grounds even the most outrageous storylines in recognizable human emotions. The show's musical elements deserve special recognition for their sophistication and variety. From Stewie and Brian's elaborate musical numbers to Peter's impromptu songs, music serves as both comedic device and emotional outlet. The production values of these musical segments often rival those of dedicated musical programs, demonstrating the creative team's commitment to excellence across all aspects of the show. Family Guy's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. Countless memes, reaction GIFs, and viral videos have emerged from the show's vast catalog of episodes. The series' quotability and visual humor translate perfectly to social media platforms, ensuring its continued relevance with new generations of viewers who might discover it through digital clips rather than traditional television broadcasts. The show's controversial moments and boundary-pushing humor have generated significant debate about the limits of comedy and the responsibilities of creators. These controversies, while sometimes damaging to the show's reputation, have also kept it in the cultural conversation and demonstrated its power to provoke strong reactions from viewers. International versions and adaptations of Family Guy reveal how the show's humor translates across different cultures. While some jokes lose their impact in translation, the core family dynamics and character relationships remain universally recognizable, suggesting that the show taps into fundamental aspects of family dysfunction that transcend cultural boundaries. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy reflects its status as a cultural phenomenon. From action figures and clothing to video games and mobile apps, the Griffin family has become a brand unto itself. This commercial success has provided financial stability that allows the creative team to take risks and experiment with different storytelling approaches. Behind-the-scenes stories from the show's production reveal the collaborative nature of its creative process. Writers, animators, and voice actors all contribute to the development of storylines and character moments, creating a more organic creative environment than the top-down approach used by many animated series. The show's relationship with censorship and broadcast standards has evolved over time. with later episodes featuring content that would have been impossible during the series' early years. This gradual relaxation of standards reflects broader changes in television content policies and audience expectations. Academic analysis of Family Guy has produced numerous scholarly papers examining its cultural impact, narrative structure, and social commentary. These serious examinations of what many dismiss as lowbrow entertainment reveal the complexity hidden beneath the show's irreverent surface. The series' longevity has allowed it to comment on changing social attitudes and cultural shifts over more than 2 decades. Episodes from different eras reflect the concerns and preoccupations of their respective time periods, creating an inadvertent chronicle of American culture's evolution. Future storylines and character developments remain unpredictable, as the show's willingness to subvert expectations and challenge viewer assumptions continues to drive its creative choices. The balance between maintaining familiar character dynamics and allowing for growth and change represents an ongoing challenge for the creative team. Fan theories about hidden meanings, secret connections, and future plot developments demonstrate the active engagement of the show's audience. These theories, while often reaching far beyond the creator's actual intentions, reveal the deep investment viewers have in the show's fictional universe and characters. The show's treatment of sensitive topics has evolved over time, reflecting both changing social standards and the creator's own growth and development. While early episodes sometimes relied on shock value and transgressive humor, later seasons have shown more nuanced approaches to difficult subjects. As you drift off to sleep tonight, consider how Family Guy has woven itself into the fabric of popular culture while maintaining its essential identity as a story about one deeply flawed but ultimately loving family. The Griffin clan's adventures may be absurd and their behavior often inexcusable, but their struggles with identity, acceptance, and belonging reflect universal human experiences that resonate with audiences around the world. Sweet dreams, and remember that no matter how chaotic your own family might seem, at least you're not dealing with a time-traveling baby, a talking dog with writer's block, and a father who once fought a giant chicken in an epic multi-episode battle that destroyed half of downtown Quahog.
Picture this. You're scrolling through endless YouTube videos at 2 a.m. Your brain craving something familiar yet fascinating to drift off to. Well, buckle up, because I've got a treasure trove of Family Guy secrets that'll either help you sleep peacefully or keep you wide awake wondering how this animated chaos machine actually works. From behind-the-scenes drama to mind-bending production facts, these random tidbits about the Griffin family will give your brain exactly what it needs for that perfect sleepy time content. Let me start with something that'll blow your mind right off the bat. The voice of Stewie Griffin, that diabolical baby genius we all know and love, is performed by the show's creator, Seth MacFarlane himself. But here's the kicker that most people don't realize. MacFarlane originally based Stewie's voice on the legendary actor Rex Harrison, who played Professor Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady. That posh, sophisticated British accent that makes Stewie sound like he stepped out of a Victorian manor. It's basically a baby doing an impression of a 1,960 seconds Broadway star. The irony is delicious when you think about it. This character, who spends half his time plotting world domination, is essentially channeling a musical theater legend. Now, if you think that's wild, wait until you hear about the show's near-death experience that almost prevented it from becoming the cultural phenomenon we know today. Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice, by Fox. The first cancellation happened in 2002 after just 3 seasons, and for a hot minute there, it looked like the Griffin family was done for good. But then something magical happened that literally brought the show back from the dead. DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns created such a massive fan following that Fox had no choice but to resurrect it in 2005. It's like the show became a zombie that refused to stay buried, clawing its way back to life through sheer fan devotion. The creation story of Family Guy itself reads like something out of a fever dream. Seth MacFarlane was just 24 years old when he pitched the show to Fox, making him one of the youngest people ever to create and run their own animated series for a major network. He literally animated the entire pilot episode by himself, spending months hunched over a desk drawing frame after frame while surviving on probably nothing but coffee and determination. The original pitch was actually inspired by his college thesis film called The Life of Larry, which featured a middle-aged man with a talking dog. Sound familiar? That little student film eventually evolved into the multi-million-dollar empire we know today. Speaking of that talking dog, Brian Griffin holds a special place in animation history for reasons you probably never considered. Unlike most cartoon pets who remain perpetually animal-like, Brian is essentially a human character who just happens to be a dog. He drives cars, drinks martinis, writes novels, and engages in complex philosophical debates. McFarlane has stated that Brian represents his own voice in the show more than any other character, which explains why the dog often serves as the moral compass of the family. It's basically McFarlane having conversations with himself through a talking animal, which, when you think about it, is either brilliant or slightly concerning. The show's controversial humor didn't emerge by accident. It was a carefully calculated rebellion against traditional family sitcoms. McFarlane deliberately set out to create the anti-Simpsons, something that would push every boundary the Simpsons wouldn't touch. Where the Simpsons used gentle satire and heartwarming family moments, Family Guy went nuclear with shock, humor, and deliberately offensive content. The cutaway gags, those random flashback sequences that became the show's signature, were originally McFarlane's solution to a problem he had with traditional sitcom pacing. He wanted to break free from the constraints of linear storytelling and create something that felt more like channel surfing through a fever dream. Here's a production detail that'll make you appreciate the craft behind the chaos. Each episode of Family Guy takes approximately 10 months to complete, from initial script to final animation. That means the episodes you're watching right now were being worked on almost a year ago. The animation process alone involves hundreds of artists working across multiple studios, with the initial designs created in California before being sent overseas for full animation. It's like a massive international relay race, where each handoff has to be perfect or the whole episode falls apart. The voice acting sessions are apparently legendary affairs that sound more like comedy improv shows than traditional recording sessions. McFarlane voices not just Stewie, but also Brian, Peter, and Glenn Quagmire, often having entire conversations with himself in the recording booth. The other voice actors have described watching him switch between characters mid-sentence as both impressive and slightly unsettling. Imagine seeing someone argue with themselves in 4 different voices while maintaining perfect character consistency. It's basically like watching a one-man theater performance in real time. One of the most fascinating aspects of Family Guy's production is how the writer's room operates. Unlike many animated shows that plan seasons far in advance, Family Guy's writing process is notoriously chaotic and last-minute. Writers have described sessions where entire episodes get scrapped days before animation begins, leading to frantic rewrites and sleepless nights. This seat-of-the-pants approach actually contributes to the show's unpredictable energy, but it also means that voice actors sometimes receive new scripts literally hours before recording sessions. The show's relationship with censorship has been a constant dance between pushing boundaries and avoiding network wrath. Family Guy has developed an almost scientific approach to testing limits, deliberately writing jokes that are slightly more offensive than what they actually want to air, knowing that network censors will demand cuts. The final version that reaches viewers is often the writer's actual intended content, achieved through strategic overwriting and negotiation. It's psychological warfare, disguised as comedy writing. McFarlane's musical background plays a much larger role in the show than most people realize. Before creating Family Guy, he was actually a jazz vocalist and pianist, which explains the numerous musical numbers scattered throughout episodes. Those elaborate song and dance sequences aren't just random comedy bits. They're genuine musical theater productions compressed into cartoon format. McFarlane has stated that he views Family Guy as partly a variety show, using the Griffin family as a framework to showcase different types of entertainment within each episode. The character designs themselves tell an interesting story about animation philosophy. Notice how the Griffin family members all have distinctly different body shapes and facial structures, unlike many cartoon families where everyone looks like variations of the same template. Peter's round, doughy appearance was specifically designed to contrast with Lois's sharp, angular features, while Stewie's football-shaped head was meant to make him instantly recognizable even in silhouette. These design choices weren't arbitrary. They were carefully calculated to ensure each character would be visually distinct even in crowded scenes or quick cuts. Here's something that'll change how you watch the show forever. The infamous chicken fights between Peter and Ernie the Giant Chicken weren't originally planned as recurring segments. The first chicken fight was supposed to be a one-off gag, but the animation team had so much fun creating the over-the-top action sequence that it became a running theme. Those elaborate, destruction-filled battles that seem to last forever? They're essentially the animation team showing off their action sequence skills in a comedy show, like flexing creative muscles that don't usually get exercised in traditional sitcom animation. The show's approach to celebrity guest stars is uniquely twisted compared to other animated series. While most cartoons treat celebrity appearances as special events, with the famous person playing themselves or a character clearly meant to be them, Family Guy often buries celebrity voices in minor roles without any fanfare. A-list actors will voice background characters for single lines, and viewers might never realize they just heard a famous person deliver a throwaway joke. It's the entertainment industry equivalent of hiding expensive ingredients in cheap fast food. Family Guy's international versions reveal fascinating cultural differences in humor. In some countries, entire episodes have been rewritten because the original jokes simply don't translate, not just linguistically, but culturally. What Americans find hilarious might be completely incomprehensible to audiences in other parts of the world, leading to localized versions that are essentially different shows with the same characters. It's like each country gets its own flavor of the Griffin family chaos, tailored to local sensibilities. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy extends into some surprisingly niche markets. Beyond the obvious t-shirts and DVDs, there are Family Guy-themed wine collections, luxury watches, and even high-end collectible sculptures that cost thousands of dollars. The show that built its reputation on lowbrow humor has somehow spawned upscale merchandise that wouldn't look out of place in expensive boutiques. It's cultural cognitive dissonance at its finest. The writing staff includes people from incredibly diverse backgrounds: former stand-up comedians, Harvard graduates, television veterans, and complete newcomers to the industry. This mix creates a unique creative environment where highbrow intellectual humor crashes into street-level comedy instincts. The result is a show that can reference obscure philosophical concepts in one scene and make fart jokes in the next, often within the same episode. Animation errors in Family Guy have become something of a cult fascination among fans. Unlike other shows that try to hide mistakes, Family Guy occasionally leaves obvious animation goofs in the final product, either intentionally, as Easter eggs, or because the production schedule doesn't allow for fixes. These errors have spawned online communities dedicated to spotting and cataloging every miscolored character, floating object, or impossible perspective. It's accidental, interactive entertainment, where viewers become detectives hunting for visual inconsistencies. The show's theme song, that bouncy piano melody everyone knows by heart, was originally much longer and included additional verses that were cut for time. The full version tells a more complete story about the Griffin family's dynamics, but network television's rigid timing requirements forced it down to the bare essentials. MacFarlane has occasionally performed the complete version at live concerts, giving fans a glimpse of what could have been the opening sequence if television had more flexible formatting. Voice acting for animated shows requires a completely different skill set than live-action performance, and Family Guy pushes these demands to extremes. The actors often need to deliver lines while laughing, crying, or even while their characters are supposed to be eating, fighting, or running. This means recording sessions frequently involve voice actors doing physical comedy performances in sound booths, acting out entire scenes with just their voices, while making exaggerated facial expressions that no one will ever see, but that somehow make the vocal performance more authentic. The show's relationship with current events creates unique production challenges. Because episodes take months to complete, jokes about contemporary issues often feel dated by the time they air, leading to a complex balancing act between topical relevance and timeless humor. Writers have developed strategies for creating content that feels current without being tied to specific news cycles, though sometimes they get caught off guard when major events happen during production and their carefully planned episodes suddenly seem tone-deaf or prescient in ways they never intended. Family Guy's influence on internet culture extends far beyond just memes and viral videos. The show's cutaway gag structure essentially predicted how people would consume media in the social media age. Short, disconnected bursts of content that don't require following a linear narrative. Those seemingly random flashbacks that interrupt the main story? They're basically the television equivalent of scrolling through TikTok or Twitter, jumping from one unrelated thought to another without warning. The economics behind Family Guy reveal interesting insights into how modern television actually works. Despite being an animated show with relatively high production costs, it's incredibly profitable because animated content doesn't age the same way live-action shows do. There are no aging actors demanding higher salaries, no physical sets that deteriorate, and no location shoots that become impossible due to changing landscapes. The Griffin family can theoretically exist forever without any of the logistical problems that eventually kill most television series. Behind all the controversy and chaos, Family Guy operates like a massive creative experiment in pushing the boundaries of what television can be. Every episode is essentially asking the question, what if we tried this completely ridiculous thing and somehow made it work within the framework of a family sitcom? Sometimes the experiments fail spectacularly, but when they succeed, they create moments of television that are genuinely unlike anything else on the air. The show has created its own internal mythology that's become increasingly complex over the years. Character relationships, running gags, and callback references have built up layers of continuity that reward longtime viewers while potentially confusing newcomers. It's like a secret club where the membership requirement is having watched hundreds of hours of animated chaos, and the reward is understanding jokes that are incomprehensible to everyone else. And here's perhaps the most interesting fact about Family Guy. Despite all its success and cultural impact, the show remains fundamentally unpredictable. After more than 2 decades on the air, it can still surprise viewers with completely unexpected creative choices, bizarre guest appearances, or experimental episodes that break its own established rules. In a television landscape increasingly dominated by formulaic content, Family Guy maintains a chaotic creativity that keeps audiences guessing what might happen next. So there you have it, a deep dive into the wonderfully weird world behind one of television's most controversial animated families. Whether you're drifting off to sleep or staying wide awake in fascination, these facts reveal just how much complexity hides behind what appears to be simple cartoon chaos. Sweet dreams, and remember, in the Griffin household, normal is just another word for boring. You know that feeling when you're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone, and suddenly you realize you've been watching Family Guy clips for 3 hours straight? Tonight, we're diving deep into the twisted, hilarious, and surprisingly complex world of Family Griffin and his dysfunctional Rhode Island family. So grab your favorite blanket, dim those lights, and let me take you on a journey through decades of animated chaos that somehow became one of television's most enduring franchises. Picture this. It's 1999, and a young animator named Seth MacFarlane is sitting in his apartment, probably eating cereal for dinner, when he creates what would become a cultural phenomenon. But here's the thing most people don't realize about Family Guy. Beneath all the cutaway gags, pop culture references, and Stewie's diabolical schemes lies a surprisingly intricate web of character development, running storylines, and hidden details that span over 2 decades. Let's start with the Griffin family themselves, because honestly, they're way more complex than people give them credit for. Peter Griffin isn't just a bumbling dad who works at a brewery. He's actually a fascinating study in arrested development. Throughout the series, we've learned that his childlike behavior stems from a complicated relationship with his father, Francis Griffin, a strict Irish Catholic who never showed Peter affection. This explains so much about why Peter desperately seeks approval, while simultaneously rebelling against authority figures. But here's where it gets interesting. Peter's job at the Pawtucket Brewery isn't just random. It's actually owned by Carter Pewterschmidt, his father-in-law, which creates this whole dynamic where Peter is constantly trying to prove himself to a man who sees him as completely inadequate. The brewery itself has become this recurring location where some of the show's most memorable moments happen, from Peter's various workplace shenanigans to the time he discovered the brewery was basically stealing Budweiser's recipe. Now let's talk about Lois, because she's probably the most underappreciated character in the entire series. On the surface, she's the long-suffering wife who puts up with Peter's antics. But dig deeper, and you'll find a former wild child from a wealthy family who gave up everything for love. Lois comes from money, serious money, and she chose to live in a modest house in Quahog with a man her parents despise. Her maiden name, Pewterschmidt, carries weight in their social circle, but she rejected that lifestyle. The fascinating thing about Lois is how the show gradually reveals her past. She was this rebellious rich girl who dated musicians, experimented with different lifestyles, and had a completely different personality before settling down. Sometimes that old Lois emerges, usually when she's pushed too far, and those episodes are absolutely brilliant because they show the complexity beneath her patient exterior. Chris Griffin represents something really interesting in the show's evolution. Initially, he was just the awkward teenage son, but over time, the writers developed him into this surprisingly deep character dealing with typical teenage issues, amplified by his family's dysfunction. His relationship with his father is particularly touching because Peter, despite his flaws, genuinely tries to connect with Chris, even though he has no idea how to be a proper role model. What makes Chris compelling is how he's actually the most emotionally intelligent member of the family. He sees through his parents' problems, understands his sister's struggles, and often serves as the voice of reason, even though he's still figuring out his own identity. His various crushes, friendships, and coming-of-age moments provide some of the show's most genuine emotional beats. Meg Griffin. Oh, poor Meg. She's become this cultural touchstone for teenage awkwardness. But there's something genuinely tragic about her character that goes beyond the surface-level jokes. The constant rejection and abuse she faces from her family would destroy most people, but Meg keeps trying. She keeps hoping for acceptance, keeps pursuing her dreams, keeps believing that maybe tomorrow will be different. The really dark aspect of Meg's story is how the family uses her as their collective punching bag to avoid dealing with their own problems. When Peter and Lois are having marriage troubles, they unite in mocking Meg. When Chris feels insecure, he puts down Meg. It's this twisted family dynamic where she serves as the lightning rod for everyone else's dysfunction. But here's what's brilliant about the show's treatment of Meg. Occasionally, they give her episodes where she fights back or finds genuine happiness, and those moments hit differently because we've watched her suffer for so long. When she stands up to her family or finds someone who appreciates her, it feels earned in a way that's surprisingly powerful for a comedy show. Then there's Stewie, the baby genius with unclear sexual orientation and a British accent that nobody questions. Stewie's character has gone through the most dramatic evolution of anyone in the show. He started as this one-note villain baby trying to kill his mother and take over the world, but gradually became this complex character dealing with identity issues, family dynamics, and his relationship with Brian. The Stewie-Brian friendship is honestly the heart of the entire series. These two characters, despite their obvious differences, have this incredible bond built on mutual respect and genuine affection. Their adventures together, from time travel to road trips, provide some of the show's best storytelling because the writers can explore deeper themes through their relationship. What's fascinating about Stewie is how his intelligence serves as both a blessing and a curse. He can build time machines and understand complex scientific concepts, but he's, quote, still emotionally a child dealing with typical childhood fears and insecurities. His relationship with his mother is particularly complex because while he originally wanted to kill her, he gradually develops this deep love for Lois that he struggles to express. Brian Griffin deserves his own deep dive because he's arguably the show's most controversial character. He's this liberal intellectual dog who writes novels nobody reads, drinks martinis, and constantly preaches about social issues while being fundamentally flawed himself. Brian represents this specific type of person we all know, the friend who talks a good game about being progressive and enlightened, but whose actions don't always match their rhetoric. The genius of Brian's character is how the show gradually reveals his hypocrisy without completely destroying his likability. He's pretentious, he's selfish, he's often wrong about things he claims to understand, but he's also capable of genuine growth and moments of real insight. His romantic relationships throughout the series serve as this ongoing commentary on his character flaws and his struggle to become a better person. One of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy lore is how the show handles continuity. On the surface, it seems like a show where anything can happen and nothing really matters. But if you pay attention, there's actually a surprising amount of consistency in character development and running storylines. The writers remember details from episodes that aired years ago and will call back to them in unexpected ways. Take the ongoing rivalry between Peter and the giant chicken, Ernie. What started as a throwaway gag about expired coupons evolved into this epic saga spanning multiple episodes and featuring increasingly elaborate fight sequences. These battles have become legendary among fans because they represent the show's commitment to taking absurd premises to their logical extreme. The show's relationship with death is particularly fascinating. Characters die and come back, timelines get altered, and reality bends in ways that should break the show's internal logic. But somehow, it all works because the emotional core remains consistent. When major characters like Brian temporarily died, the fan reaction was intense because despite all the show's surreal elements, viewers had formed genuine attachments to these characters. Let's talk about Quahog itself, because the town is almost a character in its own right. This fictional Rhode Island community is populated by an incredible cast of recurring characters who each bring their own flavor to the show's universe. There's Joe Swanson, the paralyzed police officer whose determination and positive attitude contrast sharply with his neighbor's various dysfunctions. Cleveland Brown, before he got his own spin-off, represented this calm, reasonable voice in the chaos of Quahog. His friendship with Peter, despite Peter's often thoughtless behavior, showed this theme that runs throughout the series about how genuine friendships can survive even the most ridiculous circumstances. Glenn Quagmire is probably the most controversial neighbor because he's simultaneously hilarious and deeply disturbing. His character serves as this extreme example of toxic masculinity taken to absurd lengths, but the show occasionally gives him moments of vulnerability that suggest there's more to him than just his predatory behavior. The local businesses in Quahog each have their own personalities too. The Drunken Clam isn't just a bar where the guys hang out. It's this working-class sanctuary where they can escape their domestic responsibilities and bond over beer and television. Jerome, the bartender, represents this stable, wise presence who's seen everything and judges nothing. One of the most underappreciated aspects of Family Guy lore is how it handles social commentary. Yes, the show is often criticized for pushing boundaries, but if you look closely, there's actually a consistent moral framework underlying most episodes. The show frequently punishes characters for their bad behavior, even if those consequences don't carry over to future episodes. Peter's schemes usually backfire spectacularly, teaching him lessons he immediately forgets. Stewie's attempts at manipulation often result in him learning something about empathy or human connection. Brian's pretensions are regularly deflated by reality. The show has this way of exploring serious topics through absurd scenarios that somehow makes the underlying messages more palatable. The cutaway gags, which are probably the show's most recognizable feature, serve a purpose beyond just getting laughs. They provide breathing room in episodes, allow for pop culture commentary, and give the writers freedom to explore ideas that wouldn't fit into the main storyline. Some of these gags have become so iconic that they've entered the broader cultural conversation. What's really impressive about Family Guy's longevity is how it's managed to stay relevant across multiple decades of changing cultural landscape. The show started in the late 90s, survived cancellation, came back stronger than ever, and continues to find new audiences while maintaining its core identity. That takes real skill from the writers, voice actors, and animators who bring this world to life. The voice acting, especially, deserves recognition because Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters while maintaining distinct personalities for each one. Peter's Rhode Island accent, Stewie's British sophistication, Brian's intellectual pretensions, roulette. Each voice tells you everything you need to know about the character before they even start talking. As we've journeyed through this animated universe tonight, what emerges is a picture of a show that's far more thoughtful and complex than its reputation might suggest. Family Guy works because beneath all the chaos and controversy, it's fundamentally about family. Messy, complicated, dysfunctional family, but family nonetheless. The Griffins may be terrible to each other most of the time, but when it really matters, they come together. Peter and Lois may have a dysfunctional marriage, but there are moments of genuine love and connection. The kids may be weird and damaged, but they're finding their way through adolescence and childhood as best they can. Maybe that's why Family Guy has endured for so long, and why we keep coming back to Quahog night after night. In a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable, there's something comforting about a fictional family that's even more messed up than we are, but somehow keeps going anyway. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that somewhere in Rhode Island, Peter Griffin is probably doing something incredibly stupid, Lois is wondering how her life got to this point, and Stewie is plotting world domination, while secretly just wanting someone to read him a bedtime story. Sweet dreams, and thanks for joining me in the wonderfully weird world of Family Guy.